catch-all in there if anything comes up along the way. Okay, so, somebody approve the minutes, please. Hi, Daniel. There you go.
Thanks.
Sorry. And a second on the either, thanks Tom,
Said you
and all in favor, unanimous, I think, first, right? So we didn't need to change the agenda, so unanimous. Adoption of the minutes. You wanna have a quick look at those?
Motion to approve.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, adopted. Public comments? There's no 10 out there tonight. Let that go. So business arising from the minutes, discussion council resolutions. And these, so I guess we go through it. As you can see, they were all carried. And the ones that's on page 5 there. So all the resolutions were carried. I can't remember what the problem was with the first one there.
I mean, they're all the same, except for tiny, I'm trying to remember what
The issue with the first one was that Councillor Morse felt that the work had essentially already been done, and that there were additional costs being incurred if we were to hire a consultant at this
Oh,
point.
you changed the words to explore the hiring of a consultant. In
Yeah.
other words,
That's
very
right.
cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that will be, we're meeting with Urban Systems tomorrow. We've hired them, for those that don't know, as our interim Director of Engineering Services with our Public Works Manager leaving. And this is on our list to discuss with them tomorrow.
Okay.
So, but is there some work that's been done here then on the feasibility of these services? Is that what you're suggesting there?
I actually don't know, but
Oh.
Councillor Morse
Yeah.
felt as though this was redundant.
I think there are a number of historical studies that have been done.
Okay.
So the idea of this consultant would be to pull them together
Oh, yeah.
for us. Because I think over the last 20 years, there's been a few kicks at the can.
Sure, yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, any words of wisdom on that, Daniel?
No, I was gonna say, I think it was Webster Engineering did the
Yeah.
big design work before the Belterra rezoning. So that would be a key piece we'd pull together for a consultant, but I think it's still needing to review it and say, okay, that was 10 years ago,
Yeah,
where are we now?
yeah.
I mean, I think probably the reality is like the routing doesn't change. In
No.
terms of what they probably designed is probably what still makes sense for lot 1 in terms of they came down and went to sort of the works yard or a lift station to pump to past the school in that way. And that
Mhm.
probably still makes sense, like, I would, you know, the sort of geography hasn't changed, but probably the amounts have for the planning on lot 1 and as it all progresses.
I have
Maureen?
a dummies question.
Yeah.
Has the technology changed in that time?
This is what we need to find out.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely changed, but I don't think that radically.
But could we just ask him to explore what economical phasing would be, like small steps?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There is a plan, but how do you implement it in small steps?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know much about this. You guys know a lot more about this than I do, but if what we need is kind of a master plan, we don't have to put in all the infrastructure. I don't see us installing the infrastructure, but if we have a master plan on how it's going to be routed and what we are actually going to service and what we aren't going to service, I think that's an important part of it. And I think that information should come from the engineer. I mean, obviously, if we could service this lot over here, but if it's too expensive and it's going to make it prohibitive for the kind of density we want to put in here,
Right.
then obviously, those are decisions we'll have to make.
Again, that's the same about phasing, maybe half the plot is septic field for the time being.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we talked about that last time.
Yeah,
and there's no,
but
no
I'm not
problem
sure
with that.
if council thinks that we want to do a huge new study, that's not the case. We just want to figure out how to move forward step by step, and then they may say at a certain point, you exceed the capacity of the treatment plant, and, you know, I mean, something needs to be done, but.
Well, that's all part and parcel of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think council generally understood that it was very exploratory,
Yeah.
and, you know, we weren't looking for $500,000 budget to start redesigning the whole system or anything like that. So I think that's moving forward, and it'll be good to get that information from Glenn.
And I like that wording of exploring economical phasing too, so when we talk to them tomorrow, definitely. It may be a little bit before they can actually look at this. We have them inundated with other issues at the moment, so it might be, might be a month or two out.
So would staff then develop the terms of reference for that?
Yes, they'll have to, yeah, for sure. I look at these two.
Yeah.
Maureen?
Are you thinking, I mean, where is the money going to come from to hire a consultant ultimately? Is this something that would be part of the 2020 strategic plan?
I think it would have to be. I think if we can just get an idea of how much something like this would cost based on the material we do have. And so it's just really an exploratory, picking their brains more than anything else tomorrow.
Yeah,
Is
it's gonna take them a while to get into all that.
I think part of the worry on the part of some other members of council has been essentially biting off more than we can chew. And it took a little bit of discussion to get this through, and assuring people that we were not going full tilt into developing this, that, and the other, but rather just getting an overview of what the terrain looked like, so that we could, you know, sensibly move forward.
Yeah, I think generally, I think council understood that this is part of the planning process, and these are just pieces that we're gonna need to formulate our decisions as we move forward.
And the mitigating factor right now, or what's tampering this down a bit, is with the loss of our public works manager, the three of us are stretched really thin right now.
Yeah,
So it's
that's,
just a reality check that we're having to
yeah,
slow some
absolutely,
things down.
totally understood.
I guess the one thing I wonder about is whether for this piece of land, which is zoned, and we had, under the last council, we had talked about it as a potential site for some sort of expression of interest, going out to the community to get you know, some sort of measure of interest. I mean, would it be possible to put out an EOI that talked about, you know, what would you do here if it were fully serviced? What would you do here if it weren't? And get that as information that we could consider? Or is that a boneheaded idea?
Yeah,
I don't know, Tom, how would you answer that
well, I
question?
think, I mean, it has merit for sure, but I think it's really a question of how you want to create the priorities. Like, do you want to create priorities on putting it out there that that land will be serviced, so that then people can consider what the development form and shape would take if that was serviced land? Because I think if you, I'm not sure that we want to leave that choice wide open. I just,
The other thing I think, Maureen, about that choice, if we ask somebody, some potential developers, to give us some advice on that, the trouble is, we don't have their data. Since we don't know, if we haven't done our own work, we won't know how much servicing costs. We won't really have any way of judging what they say.
But wouldn't it give us some indication of overall interest? And, I mean, an expression of interest is just that, it's not a commitment. And, I mean, I'm thinking about how long it takes stuff to get done. And it's gonna take us a chunk of time, you know, whenever we go into exploring, you know, bringing in a consultant, that's gonna take a chunk of time.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a chunk of time for somebody to think about that land, one way or the other. I mean, you can think linearly or you can think concurrently, and I'm wondering if thinking concurrently about that particular piece of land might actually be helpful for us. And if there's nobody interested in it, whether it's serviced or not, that's useful information for us to have, is it not?
But wouldn't that interest be predicated on the first thing they're gonna ask us
Is it serviced
is
or
it
not
serviced or not serviced?
Because
But
that
that's my
determines
point.
the
I
price.
mean, EOI, not serviced, serviced. Like, having them respond to two different propositions, is that not possible?
I go to Daniel.
I mean, I think you would, like, I think the assumption with that one was always that it would be serviced by Cove Bay Water.
Right?
Yeah,
But I remember when we did the rezoning, the density was kind of picked at a level that thought, okay, it could be septic and not on the sewer,
Okay.
similar to Volterra. And I know I discussed, I think with Metro Vancouver Housing over like winter time about, they had just put out some EOIs and they were offering help in developing, you know, if we ever wanted help developing it, they were offering assistance to develop one.
So service for water, but not,
Yeah.
potentially not for sewer.
So I mean, probably then it's like to put it out, we would want to have an idea of, okay, where's the water we're putting on, what are the asks? So we're saying, okay, it's, you know, the expectation is the developer will put in a line from here to here, and then if we have a ballpark, we know in our head, okay, if we think this is how much it's gonna cost. And we know that we're gonna wanna expand the water to do it, and when we do that, we're gonna want them to pay the expansion policy of 10,000 units, assuming it's market selling.
Yeah,
You know, you can kind of build that into it and say, okay, these are the pieces we know they're gonna have to face.
it also relates to the density that we want to see on that. Is that a single family or do we want it in townhouses?
So the zoning is for 20 attached units, and they have a maximum size, and I think they have a maximum average size, so they're like 1,500 square foot, 20 1,500 square foot units that are attached, is what the zoning was set last council.
Okay.
So I think back to your point though, if we and then the municipality wants to see that the development of that piece go in accordance with the existing zoning, then I think that may be fair, because we can, you know, in that EOI, you can lay out some parameters. You can say it will be serviced by Cove Bay Water. Here's what the zoning permits. Yeah, I think it would be okay under those circumstances, as long as we're not asking somebody to speculate on what they might be able to do there.
Okay, so
That would be
make it
what, that would be
firm.
the concern. Mhm.
I'd really like to see what the response would be to that. I mean, maybe we'd get some very viable,
Mhm.
credible respondents.
well, I think it's a great sort of experiment, because we don't really know, we've got one little piece in play there, we don't know if that's gonna work.
Yeah.
But I think it would be really interesting to put that out there. Now, Daniel, what would we have to do? We'd have to, that's zoned, but we'd have to survey it, I guess.
It's not subdivided,
No, okay,
so at some point it'd be directing us to subdivide lot one even to those big, like the areas set out in the zoning, there's 4 sub areas in lot one, and it'd be subdivided into those chunks, and then it'd be to sell that one area to have that. But I think, I mean, that could be done concurrently, or, you know, the EOI could go out and say, it's being subdivided, or,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's not as ideal as saying this is the parcel that you can look up.
And I guess the only other side to this that I think is worth just discussing is that, you know, that there may be somebody that responds to this and they come back with something, but may feel that they have an advantage getting in early, and without the servicing, without the subdivision completed and things like that. And I think where that may leave the municipality at a bit of a loss is if you did take it out to the market, fully subdivided, zoning in place, servicing, or at least the expectation of servicing, you may actually get a stronger response. Because there's only a certain percentage of the respondees that are actually going to be sophisticated enough to understand, you know, go through the machinations of what you may be able to do with something. Others are going to be much more interested in knowing specifically what they can do with the site. So you may limit your market.
Can you simplify that engineering study to simply say what needs to be done to surface all or part of that eastern section of lot 1? I mean, it's much simpler. You just, and then you get the people who have designed the system will know how much can be extended, and you get just a quick answer. I don't think it's a full study. It's just like asking the engineers who worked on it. And then if then something comes out of it, then yeah, maybe you have to come up with some money. But the first meeting, like most consultants, they probably just tell you what they think. First meetings are normally for free too, by the way. You can get a lot of information out of the first meeting.
So does, my
Yeah.
question would be then, how much work would be involved in potentially putting this out there? Would it make you scream and have sleepless nights, or is it potentially doable?
Well, the question is, do we feel as a committee that this is something that we'd like to pursue and try to put that piece of property on the market, or send it out for an expression of interest, or, and if we do want to do that, should we pursue that, go along those lines to get it activated? Because I think it would be an interesting, at some point in time, we got to figure out, valuations of all these things and that sort of thing, and how much interest there is.
I'm sorry, I have to be really clear here. Right now, we have 0 capacity as staff,
Yeah,
less than 0.
yeah,
And to me, this is, putting an EOI out is fine, but it's engaging with interested parties, providing them with the information. And,
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, unless you put it
I'm
in,
sorry to say that, but that is our reality
I think
right
that
now.
it would be.
If we could get somebody to stick handle it for us, that would be great. We
Yeah.
could do it. But there just is not the capacity among the 3 of us right now.
Okay.
And probably won't be for a couple months.
Well, this is a 6-month operation anyway, I would think.
But what I know enough about EOIs, if we're just putting a general one out, Daniel will be spending a lot of time answering questions, providing information,
Yes.
and it's just not there right now.
Well, is it something that could potentially be there before the end of the year?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What if
We just need a
think-
couple months.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's not something we're gonna rush into tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just wondering if it's something we can start wrapping our heads around and how it's gonna happen, and that sort of thing.
I mean, I think as a committee, what you can pull together as a committee
Mhm.
would be great.
Yeah,
It's just, as I said, our staff resources are just so.
no, I
thin now.
certainly understand that, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
can we just form a subcommittee and just meet with the engineers and see what they have to say, and then come back with an answer? I mean,
Well, we're gonna get some information, I would think.
We'll get some general information tomorrow. I'm just more
Yeah.
concerned, once we put an EOI out
Yeah,
there, the
it's so
time.
formal maybe, it's-
Pardon me?
It's so formal, maybe just start with some questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we
But
have to
again,
start.
I mean, we have to talk to them about this tomorrow, because we're stretching them then in their resources right now. Because they're providing, they're running all our capital projects right now, they're running, so we're really reaching capacity with their availability as well.
One of the things I noticed with the Metro Vancouver postings is that they'll post and then they'll have a deadline, and there's often like 6 months between the posting and the actual deadline for people responding. I mean, if there were a flag put up and then a long period for responses, that might help deal with the
log
issue.
jam right now?
The log jam, yeah. Yeah, no, for example, we'll respond to inquiries as of September 1, October 1.
Yeah.
And it just like raises a flag. If anybody is out there who's interested, and God knows if there is anybody interested, at least it would get it on the radar that there is a piece of community lands that is potentially available for a variety of creative solutions.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, I think that that's one of the things that's really important, given all the creative work that we did at the Community Lands Workshop last year. I mean, the discussions in this committee have been somewhat circumscribed to Fire Hall, Birch, Health Center, and so on, whereas this would be a piece that would open up to a broader possibilities. God knows what they might be.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, working in parallel rather than linear.
Yeah.
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 But it is gonna take staff resources, no
Yeah.
questions, I think.
I get it.
Probably
I like the idea of this long-term,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we just sort of have to think about that and think about the direction we're gonna go on that, and we can certainly plan how we're gonna advance into that. I think that would be a good strategy, but we just, at this point in time, I guess we just can't pull the trigger on it.
Could we maybe discuss at our next meeting?
Yes.
Let it gel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, no, I mean, I observed the last council doing the work on this, and I generally liked it. I didn't look at it in detail. I think it would be worth pulling it out and looking at it in detail and say, yeah, this is, do we like this to start off with? It's just, you know, just what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Sort of,
so
does it
maybe
fit
it's a
with what we're
primer
doing?
on lot one for this
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds good.
yeah, okay, so we'll do that at the
Lot
next.
I mean, that corner
Yeah.
particularly.
Yeah,
I mean, the rest is really loose, but that was,
yeah, so Daniel, you
Yeah.
can walk through the committee through
Yeah,
sure.
what the rezoning looks like right
Yeah.
now, and,
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
and then,
great.
and maybe what we can do too, if we have that offer from Metro Vancouver, is just reach out and,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And just,
Yeah.
even we'll just bring some examples
Yeah,
and say if
yeah,
this is
bring some
a virtual
examples of
zone.
VOIs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry to be a downer on this, I'm just trying, it's just the reality of what we're
The reality's reality, no, there's no question about that. Any other comments on that? Basically, we're just sort of talking about these different recommendations that went through council. I think the second and the third one, I think they were just well received. The council they said, yeah, sure, investigate what's going on there and that sort of thing. As a proponent, part of lot 3, what kind of, I don't know.
does anyone understand
Yeah.
what number
Legal?
means? Yeah. The,
So I think that's what Daniel has provided,
Yeah.
yeah, and I haven't
So
read it.
we're gonna move those to the close though?
Yeah,
Oh, I
So
see.
we're not
Yeah.
gonna get into those right now, so
Okay.
that kind of,
Finishes my work.
that almost finishes our work plan, unless, has anybody got anything else they'd like to talk to them about in other business? I mean, I also feel that we, as a committee, we have to have some direction. I feel like we're just back into that little piece here, a little piece there, and that sort of thing, and I think, I don't know how everybody feels, but the kind of the mandate was to look at all the community lands and try to get them separated up and evaluated and that sort of thing, so that we have a register of where we're going forward and that sort of thing. And that lot will fit right in there, I mean, there's no question that'll be one of the lots. So do we want, in the future, do we want to go to lot 1, or do we want to do some work on lot 2? I don't know. I mean, eventually we're going to get to all of them.
Mhm.
We've done a little bit of background work on lot 3 here, which will be evident in the closed meeting. So, as far as, at the last meeting we had, we were obviously quite interested in seeing what was going on with Snuff Coast. And so we do have a response from them on that. I don't know if Bowen Court is quite ready. I just don't have a feeling about that. Whether they're quite there, which is interesting, because if we want to get that access up that laneway and sort of do some kind of a land exchange, then we sort of have to think about how we're going to push that, because I don't think we can do anything on lot 2 unless we know how we're going to get in there. And we talked about that, and cutting off the other entrance into lot 2 is, I don't know, there was a comment made the last time, is it, do we really want to get involved with that if in fact we can't do something on the other side? I mean, this is a bit of a problem. So I think we're just gonna have to let that rest until we can, well, we'll talk about this other part. But, yeah. Tom.
So would there, just following your conversation, would there then be some value in actually putting all of these lands on the table in front of this committee and actually start to do a more detailed study?
Yeah,
Based, I mean, we've got a lot of information that's already been compiled.
absolutely, absolutely.
And it seems like that should be the starting place, is to go,
Yeah,
as a committee, we should work our way through that stuff and just try and come to some consensus on how then to formulate what this master plan might look like for potential uses of all the different pieces. And that way we can then start the process of beginning to prioritize where does the municipality want to go with this in terms of where to start. And then, but I think the other thing to keep in mind is just what Maureen, the point that she raised. I mean, we'll get, it's very likely that there'll be pieces that will rise naturally.
Yes,
And people will
yeah.
take an interest in, that's gonna happen. But what I'd like to make sure about is that this committee gives council direction on, you know, how to answer some of those questions.
Correct.
In terms of prioritizing a planning process around how these are gonna come up to the market. I think that would be very helpful.
Rather than piecemeal.
Yeah, I'd rather see us looking at the whole thing and trying to conceptualize what the overall plan might be.
That's what's making me a little bit nervous about what we're starting to do.
Yeah.
Starting to pick it apart again.
Yeah, and we really need to take the big picture and decide where we're going and what needs to be done, and you say the priorities will start to rise. You know, and some of the big questions are engineering ones, which hopefully will get some kind of order of magnitude on. Because that can affect a great deal where we go and what becomes desirable and developable.
I concur 100%. I think it's important that we go back and look at the history. Everybody's got their binders, you know, and there has been a lot of work being done. So maybe for the next few meetings, maybe for a couple of months or 3 months, we can get back into that and just look at all the community lands, look at the zoning that has taken place and that sort of thing, and then divisions. And then maybe about the end of that time, when we're feeling a lot better about all the community lands, we can go back to that piece of property and say, you know what, let's throw it out there and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
I don't know how everybody feels about that, but
I think we do need the time. I also, I have a copy of the Snug Cove Master Plan,
yeah,
the great big book that was
Yeah.
produced by Hudson Beck.
Oh,
yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah.
And it is not part of the binder.
That's right.
And I found it extremely helpful,
Yeah.
so I think it might
That
be
was
useful.
during your last council, Jim,
Yep,
wasn't
and
it?
I have a copy to that link, but then if I get it back, you still have that, not back, or the big.
I think we
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we can get some,
Yeah.
we'll get, Daniel has some, so we'll get, maybe see if we can get them reproduced.
Yeah.
And get it- Do you have it at the office, I think? We'll figure it out, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
I
Yeah.
repeated that too, I think.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
the point is that occasionally at council, someone will mention, well, what happened to the Snug Cove, this and that?
Yeah.
And it's not always clear what they're getting at, and I think we need to be sure of what they're getting at by being really familiar with those documents.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how much of these lots actually fall within the Snug Cove.
I mean, always lot 2 and 3, and sometimes lot 1, depending on the study, how far out.
Yeah, okay.
So Hudson Backer is now called Dialogue, you probably know that, right?
In what, sorry?
It's now called Dialogue. That's the same Hudson Backer firm. And Alan Boniface,
It's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
he now works for Dialogue. And he lives in the
Oh,
island.
okay.
Okay, yeah.
And he lives in the islands.
It was, yeah, it's down that way.
Yeah, and I guess that plan was in the end defeated by council. I should remember that meeting, because it was too dense at the time. It was 4
It
stories.
was talking
Right,
about
so now
four
maybe
stories,
the same plan is more acceptable.
I would think so, yeah.
I don't think it was defeated, it was
Wasn't
more,
defeated.
it was a change in council during
Yeah.
that time frame, and it was more just paused and it was never taken off the shelf again.
Sure, for architects, that's the same. It's
Yeah.
That means you can't refer to that again.
how it dies doesn't matter. Then we get the drift, right?
Yeah, the other thing we can sort of chat about at some point in time is recommendations to council about densifying the cove. You know, like we talked about rezoning parts of, along Miller Road or something like that, and along the main drag. I mean, there's single family, I don't know what the zoning is. What is it
It's-
on the south side of Trunk Road? All those little single houses,
On the south side of Trunk Road.
yeah. Is the zoning all single,
Where-
it's
where
not
the
single
distillery
family or?
is.
Oh, it's all village commercial.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
mixed use, right?
Yeah, so mixed use, so it's like 1.5 FSR, I think, in
Yeah.
9 meters, so.
Great, wonderful.
So, I mean, I always think a mental image, the distillery is exactly the maximum lot coverage in FSR on their lot, so
Oh,
that's
sure.
what the zoning is for,
To the inch,
yeah, to the inch. That's what the zoning is for the other properties as well.
yeah. And, you know, and then we've also talked about going to 4 stories, and that's, you know, that's something that's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of background information before we take it to council, because it's not gonna be an easy push for council to accept more.
But I think you're right, Harry, in that looking, like, the Snugco plan that I'm remembering is really very, very old. The house and back work was sort of seen as too aggressive on the 4 stories, so, but it's really back, I think I might have even been a volunteer when that was done, way back in like 2008 or something.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
And so, you know, all along Miller Road, there's real opportunities in terms of.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's not just on our community lands, but it's the adjacent lands.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I mean,
Well, yeah, I kind of remember the plan. It had a parallel road, it had a second
Yeah.
road, parallel to Trunk Road.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was swinging around, kind of swinging into the middle of Lot 3.
yes,
And, you know, it was opposite, there were herons, and there was, but also like the road was very steep, and it was not
Yes.
fully designed yet, and I remember the meeting,
Yeah.
because I remember I noticed that, it's very steep.
yeah,
And then council, you know, was not happy that the road was not fully designed. And I couldn't quite understand why it was an issue, because it was just preliminary plan,
yeah,
right? But it was just politically not doable at the time.
no,
And it
That's
used a
tough.
fair amount of Crippen Park,
yes, yeah,
which, you know, I'm not sure if that's right either, to be honest.
well,
It's a park.
yeah, that's a tough one, if we
Yeah,
don't.
so it opens up
We
a
don't
bit of a
have-
can of worms, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
But I think, if I may speak for Maureen, there's elements in that plan that, like James Tour's plans were based on some elements out of that.
Yeah.
And I think to have all that information out there was good for the committee to look at it all.
Yeah, I agree, like the road going around, I mean, that's not going to happen, and we don't need to talk about that, but there are all kinds of other things
Yeah.
in there. The way
There's
the
elements.
The elements of how it all come together, and the size of the buildings and so on, was really quite thoughtful and good.
Yeah.
So maybe that's worth trying to tease some of that out then, eh?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So if we have a workshop where we
Yeah.
take all these
Yeah.
from our binders, but also that pre-work,
Yeah.
and we'll see if we can find, if there's other plans out there too. We'll get copies made for our next meeting, and maybe that's what we do.
I think that would be great.
I think that'd be a good starting point, you
Yeah.
know, just start putting pieces of paper on.
Sit down with pizza and wine and go through.
Yeah.
Perfect. Really good.
Workshop.
Anyway, that's kind of an overview, Ed, and then again, let's let that soak for a while and see how everybody feels
Sure.
about the direction we
It
take
sure
this
sounds
in.
right, though.
Yeah.
I think so. We, you know, unfortunately, we got sort of caught up in this other event. So now that that's behind us pretty much, I think, yeah, it's time to move on and see just the planning process here. And I think that's gonna be very important unless, so we don't, you know, burn up a whole bunch of time.
Okay.
And staff, so that gives me comfort
And
that
staff,
we're
yeah.
slowing it down a bit
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
I'm particularly interested in lot 2, because I don't remember, I've walked that land and it is absolutely fabulous land. It's beautifully located, and I don't think, like Fritz, you did a lot of work on 3 and on 1, but I don't
No,
remember much on
actually,
2.
a long time ago, it was
Yeah.
only done to figure out, it was very much like there were just a number of scenarios.
Yeah.
It was just to compare theoretical values, like Jim Cox was doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and so there was like, what if everything is done single family? What is it worth? What if everything is done? Because it was not the idea that there would be a plan, but there was some kind of sense of how density could affect values in the future.
Okay, good.
Which is very
It was not
important.
really, it was not
Key
really,
factor.
it was not really designed, it was not the idea.
No. But, you know, that's obviously something we have to think about too. There's no question about it. Yeah, you have to go there.
There are different scenarios.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if it's zoned, it can always be rezoned, but of course it takes time for a developer. So, yeah, what do you do?
Yeah,
But you know, sorry, Gary.
That's okay.
The other thing I think we always have to keep in mind with Bowen is that, you know, we have a relatively limited absorption
Yeah.
ability over
Yeah.
here. It's always been a factor in the marketplace, and so I think, and we really haven't had experience with multifamilies, generally speaking. We've got a few small examples, but really that's a new product to the market, and how the absorption's gonna go, and that's gonna be, the only way we're gonna really learn that is by testing it and finding how it goes with a few examples. Because that'll have a real bearing on, particularly on lot 2, if that's, you know, it's got the capacity to be a fairly large multifamily development site. And it may take, you know, we may be able to try and gauge, like, I think people would be, it would help people a lot to learn and understand how long it would actually take to work your way through a property that size
Oh, yeah.
and successfully market and build it out. It's a longer term than I think most people
30
realize.
30 years.
That's a big,
40 years.
Because there's pros and cons in pre-zoning, because, you know, you maybe provide certainty, on the other hand, and everything that could have happened cannot happen anymore, because now you fixed it, right?
Yeah.
So if it would be zoned comprehensive development or
yeah,
something.
that would be the ideal.
And then you just describe what you want.
That's right.
You know, I mean, you have
Yeah.
expectations, but it's
Yeah.
fluid.
Yeah,
But if parcel 1 is zoned and set, then yeah, you have to be, now you're shopping around to find the person who's interested in it.
yeah.
But the piece of land probably has more potential.
You know, and that's a really good point. I think it's something that we would probably want to discuss further at this table, is the whole notion of zoning, and whether we shouldn't just be looking at a CD zone on all of the community lands. And that gives, you know, you were talking about somebody seeing what they might do on a particular site.
Yeah.
Well, if you used a CD zone, that really opens up the opportunities for people to think
Creatively.
more creatively about what the possibility might look like.
I guess the bottom line is that zoning tells you what you know how to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Just from everything you
Yeah.
can do, it says now you have to do this.
Yeah.
So, and if you ask for expression of interest, well, that interest can be somewhat varied, then maybe you want to know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But then people want to know how the phasing goes
Mhm.
with the services and how much they have to pay to get going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that simple.
And it may be that you can only put the CD zone on fully serviced sites. Maybe you couldn't put them on the one we were talking about, the lot 1 we were talking about. If it's gonna be serviced by septic, maybe that doesn't fit into a CD zone
Yeah, I
very
don't know
well,
the answer
because
to
the
that,
the potential uses are so limited.
Yeah.
But just some thoughts, I think, we might want to explore deeper.
Yeah, to your point, Fritz, I think one of the things, the absorption rates, like you say, Tom, are so slow on Bowen.
Oh, yeah.
Is that if you have a master plan for something, 25 years down the road,
Mhm.
it hasn't been realized, but the demand has changed, I don't know, maybe the demographic has changed, everything's changed, so that the plan you had going forward, and I could be wrong, 100% wrong here, the plan you had going forward no longer works in that environment. And I don't know how to deal with that. I
Well,
mean,
we're already
take-
seeing that now. I think, you
Yeah.
know, you can look back, you don't have to look back very far in Bowen's
Yeah.
plan
Yeah,
history
no.
about, you know, it was single family, that was it.
Yeah.
Don't think about anything else.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what the market really wants on Bowen now. There's people that are coming out of single family, looking for alternate forms of housing, and that's a dramatic change that we're seeing on Bowen now.
Absolutely. Maureen?
I'm really glad this conversation is happening, because I understand all of the discussion around absorption rates on Bowen, but I think that what's also important is, I don't know what the opposite of an absorption rate is, but it's the people who are leaving this island, who
Yeah.
no longer have viable housing alternatives.
That's right.
And while the absorption rates for single-family homes may have been relatively constant over the years, I think that other group of people is not
rental.
being accommodated. Not just rental, but other sized homes, you know,
Yeah.
if they need downsizes and so forth. Those people are being lost to the community. And while we may have a comparatively low absorption rate on the island, if we were able to accommodate those other people who are being lost and who are part of our community at this point, we could see a very different picture
Yeah, that's quite true. What you're saying is we're not building the right accommodation
Yeah,
to match what the need is on the island.
yeah.
Which it was 100% correct. I mean, we don't have any multifamily buildings really, you know, per se. Sort of some pseudo ones, but, well, Artisan, I guess Artisan is a pretty good example.
Artisan,
And
Belterra.
And Belterra, of course, which was a huge battle. But that did work out, and that was a great scenario, and it's a great model, I think.
Yeah. But it's also escalating in terms of prices. You know, the prices have gone up 30 to 40% since 2014.
Yeah.
So, you know, the affordability of a place like Belterra is no longer what it was when it was originally built.
Yeah, and, you know, then there's, you know, you've got private developments like say John Reed Grafton Lake, and that's a big development, it's 100 units. You know, we're competing sort of on public lands and that sort of thing against this, so we should fashion our housing for a different market than what he's proposing, or else it's not gonna be desirable.
That's certainly an opportunity that's there.
Yeah.
You know, you let John and people like him do what they see as the market demand for housing to meet the development requirements and
Well, yeah.
and maybe there's this other space for, you know, another way to look at housing needs.
Well, we should certainly entertain all those thoughts as we move forward. So if nobody's got any other comments about the regular council meeting, I guess the next meeting we should probably talk about, I don't know.
I have a note here from Steph.
Okay.
She, I guess Judy has requested a meeting next week
Oh,
or soon after. And Steph.
Oh, this is regarding the lease for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's put forward 4 dates here.
okay.
Thursday, July 4th, Tuesday, July 9th, Wednesday, July 10th, or Thursday, July 11th, at 6:30. That works for her.
And at what time did she done during?
6:30 PM.
Okay, 6:30.
Either next Thursday or the following Tuesday, Wednesday.
So next Thursday meeting the 4th, yeah.
Yeah,
And then, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday the following week, 9th, 10th, or 11th.
July, I have the next Tuesday is the 2nd. We got some-
So the
Oh, sorry, Thursday, July 4th.
Thursday.
yeah.
Yeah.
She has June here, so it's throwing me off. 'Cause it's very hard.
My calendar has eliminated everything. I have no idea what Okay, let's see.
Well, I can definitely do the 4th.
I can do the 4th.
I can do the 4th.
I can do the 4th too.
Looks clear for me. I'll dial it in.
The 4th?
That's a Thursday, right, Ken?
Yeah. I can.
I'd say my preference would be the following week, because then I think I could have some of the other pieces there at that meeting too. Like if it was the 9th or the 10th, I would have more of this stuff ready, and then we could just do the
Okay.
meetings and do the review of that. If one of those times works for people, then that'd be fine.
Yeah.
So then the 11th would be what you're thinking of, or?
One of those, I
or
think,
the
the Tuesday.
Tuesday?
So if it's at the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, we're all free.
Okay, so 9th, 10th, or 11th?
Yeah.
I can't do the 10th, but I can do the 9th or the 11th. How's the 11th?
I'm okay either one.
I can do the 9th.
I'm good on the 9th. Dennis, what do you got?
I'm good on the 9th and the 11th.
Yeah, I can do both, either one.
Fritz, preference?
I'm okay with all 3 because I have to cancel my holiday, so.
Just cancel your holiday. What a guy, take one for the team. Yeah, boy.
Look, I had it all penciled in my holiday. There's nothing I can do about it, I have to cancel it.
Could I suggest the 11th? We have a council meeting on the 8th, so we're gonna have a late night anyway. And it's kind of hard to have another,
Okay.
11th.
so the 11th, if does that work?
Yeah.
Sure.
Send out an invite,
Yes.
as usual.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try that for the 11th at 6:30. So we decide 6:30?
Yeah.
And then we'll send obviously the lease, that's the referral, is the Birch agreement to lease. We'll obviously send it out with the agenda, but for those who are keen, it was part of the council agenda last night, so you can find it.
Yeah.
And maybe if I remember, I'll just send the link out tomorrow in advance, so if you have burning desire to read an agreement to lease, you can.
How did council like it? Good.
I don't think there was a lot of discussion, that was my sense. I mean, in part because we were introducing it and then referring it to this committee, so I think council felt like, okay.
Oh, well, I see.
We'll let,
I was gonna say, good, we're good to go.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
And we get the nitpick ground.
Yeah, okay, so we've sort of nailed that down to the 11 o'clock, we can have further discussion if anybody has a problem with that, but, and I think we'll move to this closed agenda. So